Olivia's heart pounded against her ribs as she stood frozen in the doorway of the executive suite. CEO James Harrington's piercing blue eyes locked with hers, his question hanging in the air between them, "Why have you been avoiding me?" The answer she'd been running from for months was about to change everything. If you've ever felt that impossible pull towards someone you shouldn't want, someone who could shatter your carefully built world with just a glance, stay with me. This story might just help you find the courage you've been searching for. Like, subscribe, and join me on this journey of forbidden attraction, professional boundaries, and the terrifying leap of faith that sometimes leads to everything we never knew we needed. The first time Olivia Chen met James Harrington, she spilled coffee on his custom Italian shoes. It wasn't the most auspicious beginning to her career at Meridian Technologies. As the newly appointed director of marketing, she'd been rushing to her first executive meeting, balancing her laptop, portfolio, and a scalding cup of coffee when she'd rounded the corner and slammed directly into the broad chest of the company's notoriously demanding CEO. "I'm so sorry," she'd gasped, watching in horror as the dark liquid seeped into what she was certain were shoes worth more than her monthly rent. Instead of the anger she'd expected, James Harrington had simply looked at her with those startling blue eyes, a hint of amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. "Well," he'd said, his voice deep and smooth, "that's one way to make an impression, Ms. Chen." The way he'd said her name, like he was tasting it, had sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "I'll replace them," she'd offered immediately, though she had no idea how she'd afford it. He'd laughed then, a rich sound that seemed to vibrate through her. "That won't be necessary. Just impress me with your marketing strategy instead." And she had. Over the next 6 months, Olivia had transformed Meridian's marketing approach, increasing their digital engagement by 200% and landing them features in every major tech publication. Her team adored her, the board was impressed, and Meridian's market share was growing steadily. There was just one problem: she couldn't stop thinking about James Harrington. It wasn't just that he was undeniably attractive, though with his tall frame, dark hair threaded with silver at the temples, and those eyes that seemed to see right through her professional facade, he certainly was. It was the unexpected depth she discovered beneath his polished exterior. The way he remembered every employee's name. How he'd quietly established a scholarship fund for underprivileged students interested in tech. The gentle patience he showed when explaining complex concepts, never making anyone feel small for not understanding. And then there were the moments, brief, electric, when their hands would brush as they exchanged documents, or when she'd catch him watching her during meetings with an intensity that made her forget what she was saying mid-sentence. Olivia had spent her entire career fighting to be taken seriously. At 32, she'd clawed her way up through a male-dominated industry, enduring countless microaggressions and having her ideas attributed to male colleagues. She'd promised herself she would never be the woman who fell for her boss, never give anyone reason to dismiss her accomplishments as the result of anything other than her own brilliance and hard work. So when she realized her feelings for James were growing beyond professional admiration, she'd done the only thing that made sense: she started avoiding him. She scheduled meetings when she knew he'd be unavailable. She sent her assistant to deliver reports instead of bringing them herself. She made sure they were never alone together. For 3 weeks, she'd managed to limit their interaction to group settings and brief email exchanges. Until today, when he'd appeared in the doorway of her office just as she was preparing to leave. "Do you have a minute?" he'd asked, and though every instinct screamed at her to make an excuse, she'd nodded and followed him to his office. Now, standing before him as he leaned against his desk, arms crossed over his chest, Olivia felt like she couldn't breathe. "Why have you been avoiding me, Olivia?" The use of her first name, something he rarely did, sent another of those treacherous shivers through her body. "I haven't been avoiding you," she lied, clutching her portfolio like a shield. "I've just been busy with the new campaign launch." James studied her face, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he was reading every thought she'd tried so hard to hide. "We used to talk. About work, yes, but also about books, films, ideas." He uncrossed his arms, his expression softening. "I miss that. I miss you." The simple admission knocked the air from her lungs. "Mr. Harrington." "James," he corrected gently. "We're alone. You can call me James." "James," she conceded, the name feeling intimate on her tongue. "I don't think it's appropriate for us to be friends." The power dynamic. "Is that what this is about?" he asked, taking a step toward her. "You think I don't understand the complications of our professional relationship?" Olivia swallowed hard. "It's not just that. People talk. If they thought there was something between us, everything I've accomplished here would be questioned. I've worked too hard to let that happen." James stopped, respecting the invisible boundary she'd drawn. "I would never want to undermine your work, Olivia. Everyone here knows your success is entirely your own." "Do they?" she challenged, finding her voice. "Because in my experience, that's not how it works. One hint of impropriety, and suddenly I'm not the marketing director who increased our engagement by 200%. I'm just the woman sleeping with the boss." A flash of pain crossed his features. "Is that what you think of me? That I'd risk your reputation, your career, for, what? A casual fling?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Olivia's heart raced as she realized what he was saying, that whatever was between them wasn't casual for him either. "What I think," she said carefully, "is that neither of us can afford to complicate our professional relationship." James ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration from a man who usually maintained perfect composure. "And if I told you I've been thinking about leaving Meridian?" Olivia blinked in surprise. "What? Why would you leave? You built this company from nothing." "Because I've been avoiding you too," he admitted quietly. "Every time I see you in a meeting, brilliant and passionate about your ideas, I want to continue our conversation somewhere else. Somewhere without titles and boardrooms and professional boundaries. And I can't have that as your CEO." Olivia felt dizzy with the implications. "You'd leave your company, for me?" "For us," he corrected. "For the possibility of us. I've been approached about joining the board of a nonprofit focused on bringing technology education to underserved communities. It's something I've been passionate about for years, but I've always been too invested in Meridian to consider it seriously." "Until now," Olivia whispered. James nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "Until I realized that Meridian isn't the only thing I care about anymore." The admission hung in the air between them, changing everything. Olivia's carefully constructed walls began to crumble as she allowed herself, for the first time, to imagine the possibility of them together, not as CEO and marketing director, but simply as James and Olivia. "I don't want you to leave Meridian," she said finally. "This company is your legacy." "Some legacies aren't worth the sacrifice of personal happiness," he replied. "I've spent 15 years building this company, often at the expense of any real connection in my life. I'm 45 years old, Olivia. I've had enough success to last a lifetime. What I haven't had is someone who challenges me, inspires me, makes me laugh the way you do." Olivia felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now," James assured her, his voice gentle. "I just wanted you to know why I've been asking about you, looking for you. It's not just that I miss our conversations. It's that I've fallen in love with you, Olivia Chen. And I'm willing to rearrange my entire life for the chance to tell you that somewhere other than this office." Olivia's heart raced at his words, the declaration she'd never allowed herself to hope for. "James, I..." A knock at the door interrupted them, and James's assistant poked her head in. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Harrington, but your conference call with Tokyo is starting in 5 minutes. James nodded, never taking his eyes off Olivia. "Thank you, Sarah. I'll be right there." When the door closed again, he sighed. The demands of being CEO. Always another call, another meeting. Olivia nodded, suddenly uncertain. The moment had been broken, reality intruding on the bubble of possibility they'd created. Think about what I've said, James told her softly. Take all the time you need. Whatever you decide, your position here is secure. I would never let my personal feelings affect your career, Olivia. I respect you too much for that. The sincerity in his eyes made her throat tight with emotion. Thank you, she managed. As she turned to leave, he called after her. Olivia? She paused, looking back at him. No matter what you decide, I'm glad I told you. Living with regret is far worse than risking rejection. With those words echoing in her mind, Olivia left his office, her world irrevocably changed. For the next week, Olivia threw herself into work, trying to distract herself from the decision looming before her. She stayed late at the office, came in early, and filled every moment with activity to avoid thinking about James's confession. But in the quiet moments, driving home late at night, lying awake in bed, standing in the shower, his words would return to her. I've fallen in love with you, Olivia Chen. How long had she been fighting her own feelings? Telling herself it was just attraction, just admiration, just a professional crush that would fade with time? On Friday evening, as she sat alone in her office reviewing analytics reports long after everyone else had gone home, her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Maya. It's 9 p.m. on a Friday and I know you're still at work. This intervention is happening whether you like it or not. I'm outside with takeout. Come down or I'm coming up. Olivia smiled despite herself. Maya had been her roommate in college and had remained her closest confidant through every career move, every relationship, every crisis. If anyone could help her make sense of the chaos in her heart, it was Maya. 20 minutes later, they were sitting on a bench in the small park across from the Meridian building, containers of Thai food balanced on their laps. Okay, spill, Maya demanded after they'd eaten in silence for several minutes. You've been avoiding my calls all week, and you look like you haven't slept in days. Olivia poked at her pad thai, appetite suddenly gone. James Harrington told me he's in love with me. Maya's chopsticks clattered to the ground. Holy shit. The CEO? Your boss? That James Harrington? That would be the one, Olivia confirmed, a hysterical laugh bubbling up in her throat. What did you say? What did you do? Oh my God, Liv, this is huge. I didn't say anything, Olivia admitted. His assistant interrupted us, and then I've been processing. Maya studied her friend's face. Processing, or avoiding? Both? Olivia sighed, setting her food aside. He said he's thinking of leaving Meridian. Taking a position with a nonprofit so that we could be together, I guess. Wow, Maya breathed. That's serious. He must really be in love with you. Or he's having a midlife crisis, Olivia countered, voicing the doubt that had been nagging at her. Maybe I'm just the shiny new distraction from his corporate responsibilities. Maya rolled her eyes. The man is willing to leave the company he built from the ground up. That's not a midlife crisis, Liv. That's the grand gesture of someone who knows exactly what he wants. Even if he means it now, what happens when the novelty wears off? When he realizes he gave up everything for, what? For me? The insecurity in her voice was palpable. For you, Maya repeated firmly. Yes, for you. Because you're brilliant and beautiful and kind and funny and absolutely worth rearranging a life for. She reached over and squeezed Olivia's hand. The question isn't whether you're worth it. The question is whether you love him too. The simple question cut through all of Olivia's rationalizations and fears. Did she love James Harrington? She thought of his quiet intelligence, his unexpected kindness, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. She thought of their conversations about books and films, the way he listened, really listened, when she spoke. She thought of the electricity that sparked between them with every accidental touch, every held gaze. Yes, she whispered, the admission both terrifying and freeing. I do love him. Then what are you afraid of? Maya asked gently. Olivia looked up at the Meridian building, its windows glowing in the darkness. Everything I've worked for. My reputation. My independence. What if people think I slept my way to the top? What if I become known as James Harrington's girlfriend instead of a marketing director in my own right? Maya considered this. Those are valid concerns. But Liv, you've already proven yourself at Meridian. Your work speaks for itself. And if James is willing to step down to be with you, doesn't that eliminate the power imbalance you're worried about? I guess it does, Olivia admitted. But it also means he's giving up something he loves for me. What if he resents me for that later? Or what if he's making a choice that brings him happiness? Maya countered. You said yourself he's been running this company for 15 years. Maybe he's ready for a change, and falling for you just gave him the push he needed. Olivia was quiet for a long moment, considering her friend's words. I'm scared, Maya, she finally admitted. Not just of what other people will think, but of how much I feel for him. I've never felt this way about anyone before. Maya smiled softly. That's how you know it's real. The things that matter most are always the scariest. As they sat in companionable silence, Olivia's phone buzzed with an email notification. She glanced down and felt her heart skip a beat when she saw James's name. It's from him, she told Maya, her finger hovering over the notification. Well, open it. Maya urged. Olivia took a deep breath and tapped the screen. The email was brief. Olivia. I've just submitted my resignation to the board, effective in 2 months. They've accepted it with reluctance, but understand my desire to pursue a new chapter, I meant what I said. No pressure, no expectations. This decision is about what I want for my life, regardless of what you decide about us, If you'd like to talk, I'll be at Riverside Park tomorrow morning at 10, by the old boathouse. If not, I understand, and we can maintain our professional relationship for my remaining time at Meridian, Yours. James. Olivia stared at the screen, her heart pounding. He did it, she whispered. He actually resigned. Maya read over her shoulder and let out a low whistle. That man is not messing around. What are you going to do? Olivia looked up at the night sky, stars barely visible through the city lights. For the first time in days, she felt clarity cutting through her confusion. I'm going to meet him tomorrow, she decided. I'm going to tell him the truth. Which is? Maya prompted. A smile spread across Olivia's face, tentative but real. That I've been avoiding him because I've been falling in love with him too. And I'm terrified, but I want to see where this goes. Maya squeezed her hand. That's my girl. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, autumn painting the trees in Riverside Park in shades of gold and crimson. Olivia arrived early, her nerves making it impossible to sit still at home. She'd changed outfits 3 times before settling on a simple blue dress, not too formal, not too casual, and coincidentally the same color James had once mentioned brought out the warmth in her eyes. She walked slowly along the path to the boathouse, rehearsing what she wanted to say. How did you tell someone you were ready to risk everything for them? That despite all your fears and doubts, the thought of not trying was suddenly more terrifying than any potential fallout? As the boathouse came into view, she saw him. James was standing by the water's edge, hands in the pockets of his casual jeans, gazing out at the rippling surface. Without his usual suit, he looked different, more approachable, less like the intimidating CEO and more like simply a man waiting for someone who mattered to him. Olivia paused, taking a moment to steady her breathing. This was it. The moment that would change everything. As if sensing her presence, James turned. When his eyes found hers, the smile that spread across his face made her heart race in that now familiar way. He didn't move toward her, giving her the space to approach at her own pace. You came, he said simply when she reached him, his voice carrying a note of wonder. I did, she replied, suddenly shy despite all her rehearsed speeches. They stood in silence for a moment, the gentle lapping of water against the shore filling the space between them. "I got your email," Olivia finally said. "About your resignation." James nodded. "The board asked me to reconsider, but my mind is made up. The nonprofit position starts in 3 months. It feels right, Olivia. Even if," he hesitated, then continued more softly, "even if things don't work out between us, it's time for a change." "Is it really what you want?" she asked, needing to be certain. "Leaving Meridian?" 15 years is a long time to pour yourself into one thing, he said thoughtfully. "I'm proud of what we've built, but lately I've been asking myself what I'm working toward. More growth? More profit? More accolades?" He shook his head. "None of that seems to matter as much anymore." "And the nonprofit?" she prompted. His eyes lit up. "They're doing incredible work bringing technology education to communities that have been left behind. Kids who might never have access to the tools and training that could change their lives." He smiled ruefully. "I started Meridian with those same idealistic goals, before quarterly reports and shareholder expectations took over." Olivia could see the genuine passion in his expression. This wasn't just about her. It was about James rediscovering something he'd lost along the way. "I've been avoiding you," she admitted suddenly, the words tumbling out before she could overthink them. "Not just these past few weeks, but emotionally, from the beginning. Every time I felt that connection between us, I ran from it. Told myself it was inappropriate, unprofessional, impossible." James listened intently, his blue eyes never leaving her face. "I've spent my entire career fighting to be taken seriously," she continued. "I was so afraid that if there was something between us, everything I'd accomplished would be dismissed. That I'd become just another stereotype." "I understand that fear," James said quietly. "And I would never want to be the reason your incredible work is undermined." "I know," Olivia said, taking a step closer to him. "That's part of why I'm here. Because you do understand. Because you've always seen me, really seen me, as a professional, as an equal." She took a deep breath. "And because no matter how hard I tried to deny it, I've fallen in love with you too, James." The words hung in the air between them, irrevocable and true. James's expression transformed, hope and joy replacing the careful restraint he'd been maintaining. "Olivia," he breathed, reaching for her hand but stopping just short of taking it. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured by my decision." She closed the distance between their hands, twining her fingers with his. The simple touch sent electricity racing up her arm. "I'm terrified," she admitted with a small laugh. "But I'm more afraid of not finding out what this could be." James's free hand came up to gently cup her cheek. "We'll figure it out together," he promised. "I have 2 months left at Meridian. We can be discreet, professional. And after that, there's nothing stopping us from seeing where this leads." "Nothing except my own fears," Olivia said honestly. "Which we'll face together," he assured her. "One day at a time." The autumn breeze rustled through the trees around them, sending a shower of golden leaves spiraling to the ground. In that perfect moment, with James's hand warm in hers and the future stretching before them, uncertain but full of possibility, Olivia felt something she hadn't expected: peace. She had spent so long running from this connection, convinced that loving James would mean sacrificing everything else she valued. Now, standing beside him as equals, she realized that sometimes the things we fear most are exactly what we need to embrace. "So," she said, a smile spreading across her face, "what happens now?" James's answering smile was radiant. "Now? I'd very much like to kiss you, if that's all right." Olivia's heart raced as she nodded, rising on her tiptoes as James leaned down. When their lips finally met, soft and tentative at first, then with growing certainty, she understood what people meant when they talked about coming home. This, his arms around her, her hands in his hair, the world narrowing to just the two of them, this felt like finding a place she belonged. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, James rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since you spilled coffee on my shoes," he confessed with a low laugh. Olivia grinned. "Those poor Italian shoes. Best thing that ever happened to them," he countered, pulling her closer. The next 2 months were a delicate dance. At Meridian, they maintained strict professionalism, their interaction limited to necessary business discussions. The board had already begun the search for James's replacement, and Olivia threw herself into ensuring her department's transition would be smooth. But outside the office, in quiet restaurants across town, on long walks through the park, curled up on James's couch discussing books and dreams and fears, they discovered each other anew. Without the constraints of their professional roles, they were simply James and Olivia, two people falling deeper in love with each passing day. It wasn't always easy. Olivia still struggled with her fears about how others would perceive their relationship once it became public. James wrestled with occasional doubts about leaving the company he'd built. But together, they faced each challenge with honesty and patience. On James's last day at Meridian, the company threw a lavish farewell party. Executives, board members, and employees from every department gathered to celebrate his legacy and wish him well in his new venture. Olivia watched from across the room as he gave a heartfelt speech about growth, change, and following one's passion. Their eyes met briefly across the crowded room, a private moment of understanding passing between them. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, they could finally step into the light together. After the party, as the last guests were leaving, James found her in her office, packing up for the day. "So," he said, leaning against her doorframe with a smile that still made her heart skip, "I'm officially no longer your boss." Olivia returned his smile, closing her laptop. "So you're not? Would it be inappropriate if I asked the brilliant marketing director of Meridian Technologies to have dinner with me tonight?" "Not inappropriate at all," she replied, gathering her things. "In fact, I think she'd like that very much." As they walked out of the building together, no longer hiding, no longer avoiding, Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The future was uncertain, it always was, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't facing it alone. 6 months later, Olivia sat in her office, reviewing the quarterly marketing reports. Under her leadership, Meridian's market share had continued to grow, and the new CEO, a woman with impressive credentials and innovative ideas, had given Olivia even more autonomy to pursue creative campaigns. Her phone buzzed with a text from James, "Just finished meeting with potential donors. They loved your presentation materials. You're amazing. Dinner tonight to celebrate?" Olivia smiled, typing back a quick, "Absolutely. Your place at 7. Their relationship had blossomed in the open air of honesty and equality. James had thrown himself into his work with the nonprofit, his passion for bringing technology education to underserved communities infectious. Olivia had continued to excel at Meridian, her team's respect for her only growing as they saw her confidence expand. And contrary to her fears, when news of their relationship eventually spread through industry circles, the response had been overwhelmingly positive. A few raised eyebrows, certainly, but no one who knew Olivia's work questioned her abilities or achievements. If anything, James was the one who received knowing smiles, comments about how he'd lucked out with someone as brilliant as Olivia Chen. As she packed up to leave that evening, Olivia reflected on how far they'd come from that moment in James's office when he'd asked why she'd been avoiding him. How his answer, his confession of love, his willingness to rearrange his life for the possibility of them, had made her heart race then, and still did now. Some risks, she'd learned, were worth taking. Some fears worth facing. And sometimes, the very thing you're running from is exactly what you need most. When she arrived at James's apartment that night, he greeted her with a kiss and the familiar warmth that had become her favorite feeling in the world. "I have something for you," he said, leading her to the balcony where a candlelit dinner awaited. "What's the occasion?" she asked, touched by the romantic gesture. James smiled, that special smile he reserved only for her. 6 months ago today, you met me by the boathouse and changed my life. As they sat beneath the stars, sharing wine and stories and laughter, Olivia marveled at how differently things might have turned out if she'd continued avoiding him, if she'd let fear dictate her choices instead of courage. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Olivia reached across the table to take his hand. "I'm thinking about how grateful I am that you asked me why I was avoiding you. And how your answer made my heart race in all the right ways." James brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her palm. "Best question I ever asked. Best answer I ever received," she replied, her heart still racing, not from fear anymore, but from the certainty that this love, this partnership, this life they were building together, was exactly where she was meant to be. If you enjoyed this story of taking chances on love despite our fears, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us all that sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards. Remember, the things that scare us most are often the very things worth fighting for. Until next time, keep your hearts open to the possibilities that await when you stop running and start embracing what truly matters.